The goal here is whenever we message anything, whether it's an email, whether it's a Facebook ad, a billboard, you name it, people need to be able to see themselves in that message, at least to some degree. They need to be able to identify with how you talk about what the problem you solve, the opportunities you present. A lot of people struggle with that. They know how to talk about what they do, but they don't know how to talk about it in terms of the other person and how it's going to resonate with that other person. And that's the key.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. If you don't need more clients, you can skip this episode. That's how confident we are about today's guest. We're fortunate to be joined today by Bill Cates, a Hall of Fame speaker, author, and coach. Bill has spent the past 25 years helping thousands of companies and professionals to revolutionize their client acquisition processes. In fact, his client acquisition system has been featured in such publications as Success Magazine, Entrepreneur Magazine, Selling Power, the Huffington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. He's written 4 best-selling books, including Radical Relevance. Let's get right to it and learn how to reach exponential growth.
Bill, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Hey, thank you, guys. And in case they just missed it, it's not Bill Gates. Bill Cates with a C. Look, Bill Gates has a lot of money. I'm going to help folks make a lot more money by serving more clients.
All right. See,
I love it.
Now, if Bill Gates had known you earlier, he could have been a few $billion richer.
At least.
I don't know about that, but that's
Bill, behind every amazing success story, there's the human story. And that's what we really like about showcasing people on Be Bold Branding. So you want to tell us a little bit about like how did you end up in this space? Like what's the growing up background and what got you into this?
Yeah, sure. Well, we're not going to go too far back to my days as a drummer in a rock and roll band touring the country. That's maybe another interview. But after that, after I realized that my drumming talent would have me stuck in Holiday Inns for the rest of my life, I made some moves. But one of the things I did is I started a couple of book publishing companies. And of all things, I actually published cookbooks for about 9 years. I published about 45 books, sold both businesses in 1989 and 90. One, I made some good money. The other, I got out of a bad partnership and some debt. So when people tell you they sold their business, doesn't necessarily mean they cashed out. They avoided a bad future. So in any event, a friend of mine, Frank Ingo, said to me, he says, Bill, you should be a professional speaker and business consultant. You've got a lot of experience. You're good on stage. I go, okay, Frank, that sounds good. What is that? Because I didn't really know much about that world. But I looked into it. I joined the National Speakers Association 32 years ago, still a member. And I started hanging out with other consultants and coaches and experts. And, kind of liked it. I liked learning. I liked teaching. I liked entertaining. It just put everything kind of together. I wasn't afraid of, the graphic art side of things. And my first book was a self-published book because I knew how to publish books already. So it was kind of a nice culmination of everything I'd been to up until that point. And here I am 32 years later, still doing it and still going strong.
Very good.
Oh, wow. So when you first started hitting the speakers circuit, what was the main topic for you that you talked about?
Yeah, thank you. So I first started out focusing on printing companies. That was my target market because I bought a lot of printing. I brokered some, sold some. So I knew the industry, and my positioning was, wouldn't you like to know what a buyer of printing thinks and how he or she chooses the printing companies? So, and I always had a mind for prospecting. I always liked trying to identify the prospects and catch their interest. That was always something that I enjoyed. So that's what I did for several years. I let's say I outgrew the industry. Very thin margins in the printing industry, and it certainly changed a lot over the last 30 years. And so what happened is I came out with my first book. Actually, it was my second book, but my first real big book for business owners. And that came out in 1996. So you can see I've been around for a while. And it was just when the internet was coming out. I wrote the book. I had to go to the library to access the internet to get information. But what happened is my market kind of found me. Financial services, big portion of who I serve over the years. The book was called Unlimited Referrals. So that industry, they knew the value of referrals. They wanted them. They weren't particularly good at it necessarily. And so it was just a marriage made in heaven. So within about a year, I made the commitment to focus mostly on that target market. And I've worked with other industries over the years, but I'm probably at my best when I'm focused with financial advisors. It's all my stories, my examples, my anecdotes. My podcast is devoted to them, et cetera, et cetera. So so I morphed into financial services. And interestingly, when the pandemic hit, I was like, business was gung ho. January, February 2020 into March. And I remember my last speaking engagement was scheduled for March 13th. That got canceled because someone in the group got COVID. And like everybody else, I was like, okay, now what's next? Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I was tempted to expand my target market. I was tempted to expand a wider net because I didn't know what was going to happen. And maybe I needed to branch out a little bit more. And then I slapped myself up the head and took a dose of my own medicine and realized, no, I'm at my best with my target market. That's where I needed to be. That's where I needed to stay, and had actually a great year in 2020 and 2021 because I doubled down on my target market.
That's a principle that we preach and agree with 1,000%. That ideal customer, knowing them backwards and forwards. So we could not agree with you more. Yeah. A lot of professionals, our audience is a lot of professionals, including financial industry people. Mm-hmm. A lot of them will tell you their biggest problem is attracting a consistent flow of the right prospects. Do you have any takeaway steps for them to help start that and process and keep it going?
Yeah. How much time do we have? Well, a couple of broad things, and then we can dig into them if you want. Certainly the referrals. I mean, that's what I've been known for over the years. I've written several books on it. And, a lot of professionals, a lot of businesses see referrals as kind of the icing on the cake. It's like, if I do a good job, I'll get some. And, I do get some unsolicited, which is good. That counts. Unsolicited referrals are a barometer of one's referability. So that's important. But they've never really built any methodology or process or culture within their business to make them happen on a more regular basis. So really committing to meeting your prospects and clients how they'd prefer to meet you, which is through a recommendation from someone they already trust. In my book, Radical Relevance, I have 17 rules of radical relevance. And rule number 1 is the easiest, fastest, straightest line to relevance with someone who doesn't know you is an introduction from someone they already do know and trust. And so we can dig into that. That's one way, is to just always have that mindset of leverage and referrals. Now, the referral process is a form of prospecting. I think it's a high form of prospecting, but it is, we're putting ourselves out there, we're promoting, we're asking, we're getting introduced. The flip of that, if you will, is the marketing side, which is attracting people to us. Mm-hmm. And that usually comes from building a reputation. Sometimes I call it reputation marketing. And it goes right back to what you teach about creating a reputation in a very clear target market, not trying to be all things to all people. That's tough. There are some people who've done that, but those are rare. And it's much easier to create a reputation in a more narrowly, clearly defined market. And that draws people to you. And so then it's actually easier to get referrals. So they feed on each other. The referrals and the target marketing, work together and talk to each other. And those are the two main ways to build your business.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I agree.
I do. And I think, you also tap into something that we talk about a whole lot. And you coined and trademarked the term, if I'm not mistaken, right fit clients, correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Um, which is, I mean, my marketing manager calls it your client soulmate, your business soulmate, right? A right fit client. Here's one characteristic of a right fit client. There's a lot, but one is they appreciate your value for the reasons you want to be appreciated. Right? We all know what it's like to find a client that every time they talk about what we do and why they appreciate us, it's go, yeah, that's it. That's what I'm trying to accomplish, right? And
Mhm.
so those are kind of the ideal. Uh, what goes into a right fit client certainly are the demographics, whatever that might be. In a B2B situation, it could be the owner of a type of business and how many employees or how large the business is, et cetera, the demographic side of things. And then also the psychographic things, as you kind of at the beginning of this interview, the person behind the business, what they appreciate, what they value. And it's radical relevance is all about being crystal clear on who that right fit client is for you
Mhm.
and why they're right for you and why you're right for them. And when you nail that, everything gets easier. We all crave clarity, and when we get clear in that area, then everything that follows is more effective.
Definitely agree with that. And it's like an ongoing process too. I find even
Yes.
with myself, I've been an entrepreneur. I didn't go to college. I went to real estate school and auctioneer school when I got out of high school, and then that's just what I've done. But it's over the years, and I'm still perfecting that. Like I'm still looking to how can I deal with that ideal customer? How can
Yeah.
I be focused in on that person that loves the craft that we do and what we're going after? And we deal with a lot of media influencers that have lots of followings,
Mhm.
tens of thousands of followers, active engagement followers, 30,000, 50,000. They have this, but they just haven't found that way to monetize that
Mm.
and to make that. And so we try to teach them what you're talking about right here, because you gotta identify that ideal client inside of that, and then craft that way of getting those referrals and monetizing that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind when you say that and monetizing a large following, for instance? I think to some degree it gets to what is the problem you solve, or what is the opportunity that you provide. And usually we're stronger when we come to market solving a problem. That's usually the better way to go, because the brain 6 times a second wants to know where am I safe, right? It's avoiding problems, it's avoiding danger, it's eliminating danger and problems. 3 times a second the brain is going, is there opportunity, food, shelter, procreation, right? The brain is looking for opportunity. It's built for opportunity, but only when it feels safe. So I always like to think of building a business this way: making sure that you are going to market, if you will, or going to your following, solving a blatant and critical problem. Blatant meaning they know they have the problem. Now, you can build a business teaching people that they have a problem that they didn't know they had, and that's doable. But it's easier to build a business solving a problem they already know they have. And then, is the problem aspirational or critical? Is it something they hope to do someday, or they've got to do it? There's a deadline, they're bleeding money, whatever that is. And people will move heaven and earth to solve a critical problem, usually, than more so than they will to aspire to something. So that's kind of the way I look at it. Are you positioned to solve a blatant critical problem? And that's usually the best and most efficient way to be in terms of establishing your business.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Fantastic advice.
That's the best answer I've ever, and advice I've ever heard on that topic, Bill.
For sure.
It truly is. And what's interesting about all this, as Michael said, we know so many social media influencers with followings into the hundreds of thousands, and they can't monetize it. And I think they're living in that voyeuristic world of, oh, they want to just see what kind of cupcake I'm eating today, right? Or something like that. But they're not really solving a problem, and that will tend to wane over time. But back to your blatant, solution to a critical problem, I love that. Years ago, I bought my first computer, and I think in 1995. And I remember right around that same time you were talking about the internet really just kind of beginning to come about in the homes, for sure. And then I was in the media world at the time, and all that we were hearing about was these new banner ads and how many impressions we could deliver. And I was, of course, in the radio world at the time, and I was selling radio ads. And so now along comes this whole impression driven world. And I thought from the very get-go, I thought that is just some crap. Right? That is ridiculous, right? Because, okay, so first of all, I know that it would say you got 50,000 impressions on an ad, but some of them would be below at the bottom of the page that never even had a chance to load, right? So a lot of that is like false. But here's the most important thing to me was I used to say, I would rather just talk to 5 to 50 people who have the problem that I can help solve, rather than know that 5,000 people saw my ad.
Impressions to what end,
Exactly.
I have a colleague who says you can be rich or famous, pick one. Well, the truth is actually you can have both.
Yes.
I prefer the rich over the famous personally, but yeah, to what end? So you're right. I mean, a list, a LinkedIn following, or a mailing list, an email list of 3,000 of the right people is going to make you a whole lot more money than 50,000 to just some random group of people. So yeah, you at some point you have to decide, do you want to monetize it? And if you do, then you have to realize that everyone on your list is not necessarily someone who is going to invest dollars in what you offer.
Right.
That's
and you
so
have to
true.
determine who are those people that are willing to invest. And you're going to have to narrow your focus, right? To, again, that blatant critical problem, or it could be aspirational. I mean, you could help people something. It doesn't have to be blatant critical. That's just usually the easiest and the straightest path. You can help people you can educate them to realize they've got an issue that they didn't know they had. I mean, like you have a lot of medical professionals, some charlatan who are trying to show you have an issue with, some particular thing, and you educate them, and then they will invest and they will buy. So that can be done. It's just a little tougher.
It is, Bill, and if you don't mind my sharing this with you, you kind of tapped into a problem that we, faced early on, which was a lot of people think they have a marketing problem. Oh, I'm spending so much money out here and I'm not getting results. And we look at it and say, no, you really don't have a marketing problem. You have a branding problem. But try to convince somebody they have a branding problem when they're really sure it's a marketing problem. So we had to come up with a very simple definition that we use everywhere to educate people about that. Marketing is just using various different marketing vehicles and platforms to get a message and image out to your ideal customer or your right fit client, right? But the message and image that you put into those marketing vehicles and platforms, well, that's your brand. So you can go out and buy 50 billboards if they're blank. What good does it do you? It's what you're putting on those billboards that is the brand, right? And so when we started describing it like that, eyes began to open a little bit more. It's like, oh, well, maybe I do have a problem. If I'm out here working my rear end off every day and I'm not getting results, maybe I should look at my brand. That was a tough one, and we struggled for a number of years before we got to that point, Bill.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. I'll tell you, the most powerful word and concept that I've discovered over the years for marketing, for sales, for messaging, you name it, and that is the word empathy. And empathy means understanding and appreciation for the other person. And that's what radical relevance is about. It's getting to know your target market so well, much more than anyone else with whom you might compete, to the point where how you talk about what you do and your brand, if you will, reeks that empathy, reeks that understanding of them. The goal here is whenever we message anything, whether it's an email, whether it's a Facebook ad, a billboard, you name it, people need to be able to see themselves in that message, at least to some degree. They need to be able to identify with how you talk about what the problem you solve, the opportunities you present. And a lot of people struggle with that. They know how to talk about what they do, but they don't know how to talk about it in terms of the other person and how it's going to resonate with that other person. And that's the key, is that showing that you know them.
Yes.
And they feel themselves in that message.
That's a great point. That has to happen. That, you're almost like, and it's such a broad world out there. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's also adds to, hopefully people are hearing the reason why you want to focus on that right fit client, because then you can learn that language better. If you're out here just saying, hey, I'm a coach and I'm going to coach anybody that'll pay me, well, you're never really going to connect with anybody.
Yes. So I'm writing a book, and I keep writing books. I just came out with a book, but I'm writing another one. And people said, so who's the intended audience? And I go, I know what I want to say, but I know I shouldn't say it. And I'm going to say, well, anyone will benefit from this book. But I know that's the death, right? If I really build a book that I think is right for anyone and everyone, the book will not do well.
Yeah.
And I know that. And so I am constantly redefining my thinking and approach to the book and how I'm going to market the book, where I know the narrower, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Within reason, of course.
Sure.
But generally speaking, the narrower, the better, because if the book truly resonates with the right fit buyers, with the right fit clients, then the sale becomes very easy.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have to figure and think, does it fit me? Does it resonate with me? Is it, for me? Then the sale isn't so easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. Is there any advice that you would give to people on the referral marketing that would sort of launch them into thinking really hard about that? Because I am most intrigued with referral marketing.
Yeah. So the first thing is to make a decision to build your business based on how your clients would prefer to meet you. And everyone in this space of coaching and speaking and consulting, and bringing expertise to a market, without question, that's the easiest way. That's the way people want to meet you. Doesn't mean you can't do other things. It doesn't mean you don't use social media. It doesn't mean you don't explore other ways of marketing. But the prime has to be meeting people the way they want to meet you. So it starts with a commitment, first of all. Then you got to be referable, right? Are you referable? Well, I mentioned earlier that unsolicited referrals are a barometer of your referability. Obviously, some people think your value is worth spreading. And what can you do to become more referable? And a lot of things there, but clearly just building relationships and creating so much value that people want to talk about you. Remarkable, if you break up the word remarkable, it's worthy of remark. So you have to bring remarkable value to your clients. Then being proactive. This is where people start to get a little nervous, right? They don't want to look like the cheesy referral guy, right, or, the sleazy or whatever referral guy. Or
the beggar.
Well, yeah, you don't want to look needy and you don't want to look pushy or feel pushy. And I get that. So there are two ways to be proactive. One is promoting. You're not really asking, so I'll give you a couple. One of my titles of one of my books is the phrase, "Don't keep me a secret." Great little thing you can say. A prospect or client acknowledges your value. You had a great meeting, whatever. Great. Don't keep me a secret out there, or don't keep this important work a secret. Simple thing, fun thing, creates a smile, but it lets your clients know that you're open for business, that you value that word of mouth. And I've seen some people get referrals, introductions right on the spot. Another, a more straightforward version of that would be, I'm never too busy to see if I can be a resource for other people you care about, or I'm never too busy to see if I can be a resource for your colleagues. And notice the words to see, never too busy to see. Those are the qualifying words. It doesn't mean you're going to take any business that comes your way. It doesn't mean you're going to take on anyone. It's going to have to be a right fit.
Qualified.
Right. So never too busy to see if I can be a resource. So those
I
are a couple
love
ways.
that. That's very subtle, but so powerful.
I think so. Thank you. You're becoming a right fit client, right? You're appreciating that value.
I very much appreciate it. It's the subtlety in the language, right? It truly is. Speaking of that, your most recent book is The Language of Referrals. Tell us a little bit about that, Bill.
Yeah. And while it's geared towards financial advisors, really anybody could benefit from it, because the principles and the concepts are really the same. And here's what I found. I found that, especially when we get into the asking for referrals, that's where people really get nervous, right? And so it becomes a strategy. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to do it. That doesn't sound like begging or pushing. And so that strategy is not accessible to them. And so what I wanted to do in this book is provide people with the language. Now, I'm not expecting people to memorize exactly what I give them. If they want to, that's fine. But it certainly will move them closer to finding their own language. And then once they find the language that feels comfortable enough, all of a sudden that strategy opens up to them. And so the book, The Language of Referrals, very tactical, very practical. Here's what to say to accomplish certain results along the way. And I'll tell you, in terms of asking, the worst, let me give you the worst way to ask. And everybody's fallen into this trap. I have. Can you think of anyone else who should know about the work I do?
I've done it. I've done it.
Or any variation of throwing open the whole universe, right?
Right.
Better than nothing. Lightning strikes occasionally, I suppose. But the best way really to ask is to get as narrow as possible. The bullseye is, I was hoping we could talk a little bit about some folks you think should know about the work I do. I was thinking about your ex-business partner. You told me you stayed in touch. You're friendly competitors in the industry. Assuming we come up with an approach that feels comfortable for you and for them, would you be open to introducing me to them? Starting with a very specific person they know. Or it could be categories. Could be categories of different types of businesses, or the types of people within your industry that their radar tends to be up for working with someone like yourself. So the narrower, again, the better in the ask. And then in the book, and then the process in general, I make a distinction between a referral and an introduction. So forever, referrals kind of worked. It's like, call George, use my name. In financial services, they often call that the referred lead. Well, guess what? These days, George doesn't answer his phone, especially if he doesn't know who's calling, wondering why his friend gave his name out, right? And so these days, we've got to think in terms of introductions. How do we get connected, whether it's in person, whether it's with an email, a three-way Zoom? What does that introduction look like? And to me, that's the word we should be using. That if you're with a prospect, if you're with a client, if you're with an influencer, anyone who has ability to connect you with others, use the word introduction, because that word represents what you truly want. And so let's always use the words that represent what we're trying to accomplish.
Another amazing subtlety, but super powerful. Yeah.
Love it.
I really like, because when you're asking for, if you say the word referral, sometimes I think people take it a little bit more personally. It's like, I mean, they could. Introduction sounds a little bit more non-intimidating.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, and it's true. The word referrals has taken on, for some folks at least, kind of a not so great meaning, or maybe they had a bad experience. They were asked for referrals and that person, bugged all their friends for days. And so, Yeah, introductions just seems to be a better word all the way around for most people.
Mm-hmm.
I love it, Bill, and love this conversation. We are coming to a close here, which makes me sad, but I want to give a shout out to Jim Rohrbach for introducing us to you, because were it not for Jim making that amazing introduction that you were just talking about, we wouldn't have the great Bill Cates on here today.
And he did a good job. He made a real literal introduction as opposed recommendation. Hey, just talk to Bill.
Yeah,
Or to
exactly.
Me, just talk to you, right? He made the connection, and that's what makes it work.
So a huge thank you to you, Jim, and Bill. Thank you for being receptive to it and being so kind to join us on Be Bold Branding today.
You bet. My honor. My pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. You want to, in closing, you want to tell the audience how they can get in touch with you if they want to work with you or buy some of your books?
Sure. Well, we talked about my book, Radical Relevance. So radicalrelevancebook.com, radicalrelevancebook.com. And then my website is referralcoach.com. And my email is Bill Cates, not Bill Gates, Bill Cates at referralcoach.com. I'm very accessible, happy to chat with folks.
Awesome. And are all your books on your website? Is that the best way to do
it? Yes, they are, or Amazon. If you just go to Amazon and, look up Bill Cates, you'll find all my books. Either way. Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you again, Bill. We appreciate you.
You bet. Thanks.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers, or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at BrandFaceGuide.com.